I've always wanted to say this, standing room only, and we have got the bus thing. So look, I'd like to welcome you to our panel today. Can you close the door as quickly as possible, please? We don't want any more gate crashes. We've got plenty of people here. Thank you. So welcome to How Do We Transform the Bus Networks? We've a very strong panel here for you today. We've got Kirsten Keane, Major Road's Senior Strategy Planning, whose attention to detail even notes that pigeons follow the motorways to navigate. We have Anne-Marie Purcell, she's Chief Transformation Officer at Transport for Greater Manchester, and she's making a difference with the B network in Greater Manchester. And a note, she's put 50 electric buses in my hometown of Bolton, so well done. We have Lydia Horbury, she's Director for England Buses UK, a charity that passionately advocates that everyone has the best possible access to transport links and how important the bus is to that that goal. And then finally, we've got David Sidebottom, who is, I suppose, complementary to Lydia. He's transport focused. It's an official watchdog on Britain's transport users. And he is, I suppose, mandated to find out exactly what people want from their services. So I'm your chair today. My name is Paul Haslam. I chair Scrutiny for Transport for the North. I'm also a councillor in North Yorkshire, and I'm also climate change champion for North Yorkshire. North Yorkshire is the largest county. It's over 3,000 square miles. We have 5,753 miles of road, so you can imagine we have a lot of potholes. Only 3% of our population actually has access to the train, so the bus is very, very important to me and to my residents. The other thing to note is in the north of England that 97% of our freight actually goes by road. The rural nature of the county I represent means that I'm very interested in how we create cost-effective, convenient, affordable for all service, and I'll be very interested in the debate that comes forward. So one of the thoughts that I've had about making bus services cost-effective is I wonder whether we might send small freight by buses so that effectively we have buses, people and parcels or post delivered by Amazon or the B network. Just making sure I'm getting that one mentioned. We're a new council and we're creating a new local plan at the moment. And one of the things I'm trying to advocate to all my councillors is the importance of the local transport plan and the economic growth strategy. And one of the things that came up this morning, and I suspect that's why we've got a bit of attraction here today, because people kept talking about buses, but it's how do we make things close to the people so that their journeys aren't as long and that we can increase the opportunities. So that's all from me. I'm going to allow the panel just 2 minutes each to just introduce themselves, and then I have a number of set questions, and then I'll open it for Q&A. Thank you.
Hello. Yes, it works. Hi. My name's Kirsten Keane, part of the Major Roads team at TfN. It might be a popular theory, but roads aren't the villains of every transport network. We need them depending on wherever we're going. Even if you get a train, you need the roads. For the last 18 months, I've been focusing on the buses, and I've become somewhat the bus lady of TfN. And that means getting to know all of our lovely partners, understanding their needs, and then developing the statutory guidance to the government on how we can improve bus patronage in the north, and then develop an action plan to say, well, how are TfN going to support our partners in delivering their bus service improvement plans? I think if you're all here, so you all know the importance of buses, but buses are the key to us delivering a sustainable transport network. And the three ambitions we have at TfN, delivering, a transformational level of economy performance, improving social inclusion and meeting the net zero targets, the bus is the key to delivering all of those. Thanks.
Hi, thanks, Kirsten. So I'm Anne-Marie Purcell and I'm the Chief Transformation Officer at Transport for Greater Manchester. And relevant for this topic, my main role at the moment, amongst others, is delivery of bus franchising and the B network within TFGM. For those who don't know a lot about that, which I imagine is very few, you're given your all in a bus conference, well, one part of a bus conference, is that basically means that Manchester is leading the way in terms of delivering the bus franchising under the new Bus Services Act. That does feel a little bit like we're the first at the front of an Apple store waiting for the new one to come out, and then we take all the hits. And it does feel a bit like that some days, but I'm pleased to say that we've managed to do the first phase. If you've been sleeping, we did that in September, come with some lumps and bumps, but we expected that. And then the next phase is in about 6 or 7 weeks, so I probably shouldn't be here, but I am. Quite busy at the moment. And then the third phase will come in January next year. I think one of the things that my background is not transport, shock horror, apologies for everyone in the room. My background is transformational change. I'm probably preparing myself for any really detailed questions and kind of make my excuses now. But the point is that what I have learned about buses, and I'm quite pleased Kirsten mentioned that they do coexist with the highways. They're not on rail, they're not isolated. It's really important that they interact well with the highways and that we coexist with car users as well and other modes of transport. And in order to get a fully integrated B network in Manchester, it's not just about buses, although at this moment that's how I am biased. It is absolutely how it integrates with rail, active travel and cycling as well as our Metrolink in Greater Manchester. So whilst I'm here about buses, actually the B network and to get people moving out of their cars, all modes as well as kind of the highways are integral to that. So thank you.
Thank you. So Buses UK has been around for about 50 years now, and our role is to give the voice of people who are actually using the buses. We're also the official ADR body for the bus industry outside of London. So we get a lot of information from people and about people and their lived experience on a daily basis. And we work really hard to work with local authorities and operators to pass that information on to see where we can make change for the better. I think everybody that's in bus is aware that decades of car-centric policies, lack of investment, pitching local authorities against each other has been pretty much disastrous for us as an industry. So really, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited for the future and everyone working together for an improved service that we can offer. But I do think it's really important to know, one of my bugbears is a phrase I hear all the time, is that buses are broken. Okay, things could be better, but let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. There are some great services. And maybe some bits need improvement, but buses are not broken. They are crucial and vital.
Thank you, Lydia. What she said. Your transport focus very quickly, independent statutory body. The thing that we're probably best known for on buses is a bit of the work on the ground through the partnerships like Lydia. So we've got people, and delighted to say that we will be launching next month the results of our sort of first annual survey in 5 years, passenger satisfaction. Views about 35,000 bus passengers across the country. That survey closed just before Christmas. We're starting off the 2024 survey, and delighted to say, Chair, we've signed up North Yorkshire to the survey. We've got about 40 areas signed up, about 80% of bus journeys covered in the survey in England outside of London. What it tells us is that the absolute priority for passengers is making buses run on time, punctual, reliable, good value for money. It's not rocket science. The challenge I think that's happening now, and I think probably one thing we'll probably get round to discussing, is proper road space, whether it's franchise bus networks or whether it's enhanced partnerships. Getting buses running more reliably and punctually and better journey speeds will make bus attractive not just for current users but for future users as well. And we know that the perception amongst non-users is still not good. We've done lots of research over the years, and still a quarter of people tell us through that survey bus is not for somebody like them. When you dive a little bit deeper into that, it's because they think buses are always late, they're always packed, not for people like them, and expensive. Making it easier to use, it'd be fascinating to see kind of how Greater Manchester, Liverpool City region and West Yorkshire enhance that by making a more joined up product offer in years to come. But passenger is king for us, and knowing what they want and holding the mirror up to the industry will be a big part of what we say when we publish our results in March.
Thank you, David. So the first question I have here is, how important are the buses to northern towns? How can we improve the service? And in particular, my concern is, how can rural services be improved? And I believe we'll probably have a couple of people in the audience that are particularly interested in that from Westmoreland and possibly Cumbria. Thank you. Do you want to start, David?
Yeah. I'm going to say this answer. I think, obviously, particularly about the way the bus industry engages and talks to communities, and obviously through the partnerships that we have now. I think there's a lot of money in partnerships at the moment. Certainly the central government funding is there to be delivered. We'll face a challenge potentially in a couple of years' time about whether that funding exists in a new government. We'll wait and see. But at the moment, there's an opportunity, I think, to make bus what it can be. The rural dimension is really difficult, and I think there's been lots of examples where, you know, we can talk about demand responsive transport. There are some successes in there, but there seems to be an awful lot of negative press around demand responsive transport, you know, sort of the £200 subsidy per passenger. I think the ability for local areas, partnerships, communities to really define what they need from that bus network is vital. We hear about it in rail, but actually bus has the flexibility to deliver that. But I think it's talking and working with the communities, and we know that from even, you know, the cutback years from, you know, the last 15 years or so, we wanted authorities who've got tough decisions to make to engage more with passengers, with communities, to understand where to, you know, sort of, if you've got to make those tough decisions, be best informed how to do it. If we're going to grow the network based on the investment that's there now, the same would apply. So understand the scope of the network and make it more reliable.
Thank you. Your turn, Lydia.
Okay, so two parts really. So, buses, as I said before, are absolutely crucial. And there's a number of ways, I think, in which we've all acknowledged that we could develop some more investment in infrastructure. I chair several EP boards around the UK, and constantly people are saying, you know, there's issues with punctuality and reliability. Well, the roads are dug up. So, you know, so we need to work coherently with that, and working with operators, local authorities, to ensure that at least we communicate those messages to people and that they are aware. It's about integration, it's about frequency and punctuality, as we've said, using real-time data as well. You know, let's not just put what's on the timetable. People need to know when they're standing at a bus stop when the bus is coming. Technological integration, community engagement, as David said, and accessibility as well. In terms of rural, I think it's quite interesting, the challenges that we have there. But can we afford not to? We can't leave societies of people who are cut off. What about the social welfare costs of people who are isolated? Loneliness, can't access education, employment, can't get to the shop for fresh food, or to socialise with people. So there has to be some kind of solution. And I think one of the things that's quite difficult about the bus industry is that it's quite difficult to enter in terms of the regulations that we have and the barriers to entry, in terms of the finance that you have to have there already, which could, in, let's say, rural communities, you know, put off people trying to enter the industry to put on buses.
Thank you.
So from my perspective, I think it's really understanding what people want from buses. So setting out our requirements is really, really key. And I think predominantly now, if you look at buses, whilst they're about 75% of the public transport usage in Manchester particularly, and they are largely used by those who come from a more socially, you know, deprived background. And the issue with that means is that they become kind of a second choice for everybody else. So it's making sure that we build services that not only respond to the needs of the people who currently use it, which is, you know, the people who are struggling financially, struggling to access work, health and education, and making sure it's affordable for them and it gives them routes that they need. But if we want to grow it and make it something that is similar, and I don't ever say the same as London because we're in the north and we shouldn't say that, but similar to London where it's used from everyone in society, buses are used by everyone in central London, that it is something that, you know, appeals to people who need it for their daily commute, people who are using it for work and for other reasons. And we also need to look at how we respond to our growing industries like the nighttime economy. How do we respond to that, particularly if we want to respond to the youth? So I think it's about really understanding what our customers need, really, and what services they need. And I won't repeat anything that anybody else has said about kind of the highways and actually making, you know, the buses run on time. To me, that's obvious. You know, no offence, I don't mean that, but it is obvious. But I think, you know, people aren't. That's the point. It's obvious, and it should be that people get to a bus stop and the bus arrives on time or within, you know, certain deviations of that, and we're using technology to actually aid their travel. But really, it's about putting on services that actually matter for people and are going to deliver growth in the industry and encourage the people who would not naturally get on a bus to leave their car at home. And that's the challenge I think we're going to face. Otherwise, if we leave it with the current passengers, which no disrespect to them, we need to deliver services for them, we won't necessarily get the growth. And I think we need to be appealing to both.
Thank you, Kirsten.
So at TFN, we've got a sustainable target of 51% sustainable transport by 2050. And to achieve that, we need buses that people can be confident in. So, you know, it's the reliability, the frequency, the accessibility. I think 70% of job seekers don't have access to a car. If you want to help them, you need to provide buses and public transport. In terms of the rural areas, so I think it's taking a targeted approach. Don't assume that DRT is the answer. There has been very mixed results about those, and I think it's about making sure that it's suited to what you need and your community needs, so speak to them, ask them what they need. There's community transport, there's car sharing and other options that can be considered. And then finally, I think we need to provide local authorities with the resources to deliver that change. So we need them to have the confidence to make investment beyond March 2025. And you need to invest in the time. No one changes their behaviour overnight. So you've got to put in the relevant amount of time and resources into them. Rural areas really do struggle with resources, so that's helped them. They're going to be focused on their day-to-day reactive working in terms of firefighting by finding bus drivers. It's shortage. They should be focusing on strategies and delivering long-term plans, but they can't because they've not got the resources to support them. And I think part of that is making most of the data available as well. For instance, bus operators have a wealth of evidence and experience, so that's make the most of it and work with them. And then finally, I think for rural areas, they're quite special in their own right. We should be selling it. And for instance, I think someone that mentioned this morning about the national parks, that's make the most of that and build up the visitor economy by improving the bus services so people can access them. And eventually, you know, if you provide these accessible, frequent, reliable services, people are going to have the confidence to travel by them and make that modal shift.
Thank you very much, Kirsten. Keep the mic because you can start the answers to the next question while you're in full flow and before the asthma kicks in. No, she's struggling a little bit today, but so I'm going to work her hard now, and then she can collapse in the background. So my next question is, how can we improve access to bus travel, and in particular, how can we open up the buses to create opportunities for young people?
So, yeah, okay. I don't want to repeat what we've just been saying, but again, it is providing that accessible, reliable bus service. It's providing them with the information and confidence to use them. Younger people need to have routes that align with, say, if you're a student, student venues and having services out of the traditional 9 to 5. I think with young people, we've got a real opportunity. They're not buying cars as much as as quickly as previously. I don't think the badge of honour of having a car is as high as it used to be, which is great. But we need to make the most of that the opportunity and capture that market by quickly delivering something that they can use. So making most of the younger ticket prices and providing routes that suit their needs. And it's a real chance for them to gain their independence. So what is it in for them? You know, let's provide something that suits their needs, particularly. I have to admit, I've got a brother of a friend. If he's late to work, because he is young, he could get fired, and he's terrified. He's had to buy a car because he doesn't trust the buses. If you don't fix that, you're not going to get that change, and you're going to have the vicious cycle continuing over and over. So it is making that change now and not waiting till the next government or etc. It's making the most of the opportunity you've got now before it leaves and it's too late.
Okay, so I think when I was growing up, I was always on a bus. So we just had we had a car. We were quite poor, but we had a car. We were lucky my dad was disabled, so we had a car. But my mum didn't drive, and we spent all of our life on a bus. Now, I don't know about you, but my kids haven't been on a bus that much. So the reality is we've trained them out of it. You know, we haven't trained them into it, if I'm totally honest. So either the schools are closer, we live closer to our schools, we often move into areas to get them if we're lucky enough to do that. So we haven't really, for a lot of people, young people now, we haven't kind of, you know, they haven't been brought up with using buses as we were because there's just not as many of them, and it's not been a high patronage. But when they suddenly become older, and mine are 19 and 17, so I can sit here with full knowledge of that, they need access to get around late at night, whether they've got a car or not. They need to access hospitality, which they all like to go to the pub. And they also need to, you know, when they go to university towns, even if they've had a car, they probably won't take that one with them. So we've got to get them used to using buses. And how do we make that attractive to them? Well, for one, we need to put on buses overnight, which would be really helpful, because the reality is that's when they need buses often. They don't often get out of bed till late, so they need buses later on in the day and less in the morning. I know that for a fact. When they are working, they need reliable services to get them on time. But also we need to appeal to them. Look, you know, at the end of the day, my kid doesn't get off his phone, either of them. And, you know, are we providing the technology that makes the buses work for them? I mean, everything is done by a phone at the moment. And can we honestly say as a bus, you know, industry, we are top of the advancements in technology? I don't think we are. So I think it's about giving them access to work, access them to hospitality, getting them on the buses, making them, you know, advanced for them, make them deliver the things that they want, you know, have an audio-visual announcement, adverts on the bus, something to attract their attention, which is a screen, another screen for their life. All of that type of stuff, I think, is really important. And we've just got to train our kids as well to get on buses, take them on buses, because, you know, I'm sure there are kids who use them, but there's a lot of children who have just automatically gone out of school, pass the test, get a car. Well, we need to start changing that. And the only way to do that is actually to give them a service which responds to their needs, which at the moment I'm not quite sure we're fully doing yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also young people, you get them to adopt something as the norm early on, and that's something they'll continue with throughout their lives as well. So I think that's really, really important. Up in Scotland, they did free passes for under 22. So the growth in Scotland in ridership last year, we saw an increase up to 30%. Which is 11% higher than the increase in England. So it's something worth considering. I know money does not grow on trees, but maybe we could start to look at more schemes. I know there are pockets. I know there are people doing things already. Transport for North East. They're doing your get around for £1. Sorry, I just felt like I had to say it like that. Not that that was very northeastern of me. And also, other things that we've got happening as well. Go East Anglia, they've done a project which was about educating young people about using the bus as well, which was quite interesting. I think that generation, the other thing that they've got is that they're a lot more aware of sustainability as well than the older generation. So I think that there's another way of opening that door as well and trying to encourage them as much as possible. And again, it kind of boils down to this perception. You mentioned perception earlier, and we've got this generation, maybe of younger people who want things, they want things instantly. They don't want to stand at a bus stop. There's a perception about buses, yeah, that it's maybe not as cool. We need to start to think about ways in which maybe that these things can be addressed, I do believe. I know as an institution, one of the things that we do, and a lot of people in this room, I know, are involved in this, the Catch the Bus Month in September. And I think we'll be doing something even bigger, more spectacular this year. So we'll be in touch with everybody soon about that. But all these kind of promotional campaigns, really, that, yeah, getting places is cool. You know, get on a bus.
Buses are cool.
Exactly.
Just a couple of quick points. I mean, I agree with everything the panel said. I think we did some research specifically with 14 to 19-year-olds about 5-6 years ago now, so we probably need to repeat it. One of the big findings from that was back to the technology point. Even then, you know, I remember one of the focus groups in Leeds, and a young lad said, I want to make getting a bus as easy as ordering a pizza. And that was a bit about on the phone. And I think the industry has stepped up on that. I think there's a lot more stuff you can do now through apps, but maybe it's a step further. I also know that the research that we're going to be publishing in a few weeks' time, that group, the 16 to 19-year-olds, are the least satisfied of all the big things around value for money, reliability, the interaction with the driver. I'll come on to bus drivers at some point, in a good way, sir. But no, I think there's stuff we can make it more appealing, because that's the captive audience bit, I think, as we've all said. If you can get them to keep using the bus when they get into the 20s and beyond, that's the new audience. But time again, all that research said, it draws it back to the basics. You can wow me with apps and information, but the bus has got to go somewhere I want to go. Are the places, you know, in town, in cities and rural areas for me to go to, and then make the service reliable. I keep banging on about reliability, and I apologise, but it is the most important thing.
Thank you. The other thing that I think about schools is, because I see it locally, is I think we traumatise our children because some of the buses we use for school transport are the most horrendous, smelly, awful buses ever. So, you know, I think it would be a good investment to have better school buses. Yeah, we've got to make buses cool. The hydrogen one outside looks pretty nice to me. Anyway, the final question, I have to apologise to my panel because it's not the question I told them I was going to ask them. But, you know, but they're so good, they've really answered the other one already. So the question is, and it came up earlier this morning as well, is how can we make sure people feel safe on our bus networks, including women, young girls, young people?
That's a good timely question, because I think certainly the work we do across public transport and rail and bus, we can see the level of, I use the word satisfaction or concern that passengers express through the research that we do, rise, certainly since pre-pandemic times. I think we've probably seen in society there's a general shift in, I don't know what the word is, actually sort of disorder or sort of rebelling against establishment, whether that be what goes on in theatres sometimes or what you see, you know, certainly with the frontline staff do a brilliant job on our public transport networks. We do see that in the research, and I think it's something that I know that the Greater Manchester, for example, is that word feeling safe has appeared in the kind of sort of top 4 or 5 bullet points of what the ambition for the network is. And I think that's absolutely right, because again, the perception bit is that a lot of buses are like the Wild West. You know, you don't travel on a certain time, and you see the differences at different times of day. It is a key thing to work on. I did say I mentioned bus drivers really quickly. The single highest consistent score we've seen from our survey we publish in a few weeks' time is the rating for the bus driver. They make a huge difference. It's a tough job and they do it brilliantly well. Yes, there's all little anecdotes about the grumpy bus driver, but I say generally there's a good story in there. And I just wish the bus industry could find a way of linking that message to the advertising campaigns that it's doing now to try and recruit drivers, because I think there's a win-win in there for the industry.
Thank you. So Bus Users UK and Women in Transport got together and produced a campaign called Make Public Transport Even Safer for Everyone. And there was a 5-point plan. It was fairly simple. A lot of things, like you say, having the driver and just awareness. It's almost common sense, some of these things, but know the issues, spot the signs. It's about encouraging other people to intervene, speak up, speak out if somebody is harassing you, make other people aware, calling out sexual harassment. But then a couple of things that I thought were quite interesting, which is really about understanding women. And again, in a panel this morning, we're talking about maybe lack of representation in the industry, only 20% in bus. Well, yeah, we're doing well here, but 20% that work in bus are female. So it was about understanding women, because they make a third more bus journeys than men to start with. So understand what they need from that and what things make them feel safe. But also then improving representation. So getting more women in bus who are in management who are making those decisions as well.
Thanks very much. So actually, I should have made that point on the young as well. I think, I don't know, I think the youth feel unsafe, possibly on bus services as well. But as a mum, if you put my son in a car, if I'm honest, I feel safer for him than he was on a bus. And actually, statistically, he's probably more likely to have a crash than he is to have an incident on a bus. But you just naturally feel, due to antisocial behaviour, that he'll feel, he will be safer, which is actually not true, if I'm totally honest. So I think more broadly, some of the things we're doing in Greater Manchester, so we have the Travel Safe Partnership. So Greater Manchester Police have deemed our transport network the 11th district, so they treat it like one of the local authorities. We have a combined effort between fire, police, operators and TFGM in our control centre. So they all come in and do events together, to deal with antisocial behaviour and revenue protection. Just in the bus network alone, we've put 30 travel safe and enforcement officers, which is a bit of a weird title, isn't it? I mean, it's a mixture between revenue and safety, and it genuinely is it is a different role. It's about making sure people feel safe, but obviously, often antisocial behaviour is connected to people who will get on a bus for free and think nothing of it. So there is a link, and I think it's making sure that we're aware of the link. I think it's using data to understand where our hotspots are. If we have revenue leakage, it'll often, as I say, be linked to antisocial behaviour. So if we can understand that data, we can send the right people. And just going back to the women point, only 11% of drivers in London are females, yet we make up 50% of the population. And as you've just said, Lydia, we make up a large proportion of the people who use bus. I think women drivers, they don't feel safe sometimes. So if we can start with making the drivers feel safe, then we've got a start and place to go. So if we can listen to the drivers about why, getting to work, how do they feel about safety, their CCTV, how does that protect them? How does the data protect them? How do the people who get on the bus, like our travel safe enforcement officers, make them feel safe? If we start listening to the female drivers and why they would or wouldn't not be in a role of a driver on a bus, then we've got a chance of also understanding what our female patronage, our passengers feel like when they get on that bus. So I think, I think there's a few things there we can take up on, but really having that partnership as well, locally, between the police, the fire brigade, the local authority and the operators is really, really key to stamping down on antisocial behaviours on our buses, and the impact that, it can be low level to quite senior. But if you tackle the low level things, then, rudeness on buses, abuse, then you can build up and kind of deal with the longer term things.
Thank you. I'm going to be a little bit controversial now, sorry. I don't think necessarily it should be just about women and children. Yes, safety is important for everyone. My partner gets nervous travelling, and so does my dad, if they're alone. I think one of the key things is that's increase that patronage level. More people who are travelling by bus, the safer you are. And I think it's not just about the bus itself, it's the infrastructure surrounding it, so the bus stops, it's the path that you take to get to the bus. Is it well lit? Do you feel safe actually waiting there? Do you have the access to information to say if it's going to turn up or not? If I feel in control then I feel safe. But I don't feel in control if I don't know when the bus is going to turn up or if it's already gone and I just missed it. I think drivers is a really good point, and I have to say, from CPT, bus drivers, the most thanked job. So let's get that into your recruitment. But I think having the autonomy giving the drivers autonomy to go a little bit off piece helps sometimes. I had a friend who was on the bus, very nervous about getting off because there were some dodgy looking folks who looked quite antisocial and a bit threatening. So the bus driver went off the route a little bit and took her to somewhere I should feel safe. And that's huge importance, and that will give you confidence to go again. It is having that community engagement with people, asking what they want, where they want it. And like you all said as well, it's about the behaviour and providing that level of education. What's been going on at the moment is amazing. For instance, if you're neurodivergent, you might not feel safe. So how do you improve that? What do you do? If you go to a pub and you're a woman and you go to the loo, it says you can ask for someone's name at the bar and then they'll make you feel safe when you get out. I see that sometimes on trains, not so much on buses. So that's provide that information and provide them with the confidence to do a normal trip on the bus.
Thank you, panel. That's fantastic. Now the pressure really comes on because we're going to ask the audience. So what I'd like to do is, when you're asked, could you introduce yourself and say whether you want the whole panel to answer your question or whether you've got a particular particular person in mind. Thank you very much. Okay, so I've got this gentleman here. You were on this morning's panel, weren't you?
I was.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
we've answered your questions. And we'll take this gentleman here to start off with. So these two, we'll try questions in pairs, see how we go.
Hi, afternoon. Graham Bannister from Mobility Ways. We help large organisations decarbonise, particularly around commute. Hello. Commuting was also already referenced as a growth sector. So absolutely fantastic. That's great. We help with that. But I was actually interested in nighttime economy because I think just getting buses to 24 hours, not only will it help people who want to get the bus home, but I looked at the National Travel Survey data. I think it's 61% of trips between midnight and 8 a.m. is private car for commuting purposes. So actually it can serve both those who want to work in the nighttime economy as well as those who want to take advantage of it. So, yeah, how are we going to do that across the north?
Panel, please.
Other than saying provide the services, I'm not sure quite how to answer that.
Where's the money going to come from? How are we going to deliver it? The services, how's it going to come together?
So it's getting that virtuous circle going, like Martin said this morning. If you improve the services, if you seek where the data is to inform your choices about routes and where the services are needed. For instance, it's not just if you want a night out, but also shift workers. Providing that information to inform your decisions. And then I think also providing the tickets that are affordable and maybe encouraging you to go out of that normal 9 to 5 timing could encourage people. And the more attractive a service is, the more people are going to go on. It seems like a really obvious thing, but I don't know why it's not. So that's improve the services. And like I said, change doesn't happen overnight. How many New Year's resolutions have you broke because you've given up after time? You need to put that long-term investment in it and build that brand. You've got M&S, really well known for good quality food. You've got Aldi, really good, well known for value for money. And the thing they've got in common is the trust. And you know that it's going to be provided. You need to provide that on a bus. Otherwise, people aren't going to have the trust to travel by bus at night. And they'll just end up getting by the car.
So I think in terms of funding of it, I think if you're if you're a company that provides, who has 24-hour work, and I think there's definitely something about encouraging employers to put forward some funding towards night bus economies, because it gives them greater access to employees across their area, maybe gives them different candidates that they wouldn't normally have had. So I think there's something to be said around that. And I think in terms of providing, a response to the nighttime economy around hospitality, Uber and other taxi companies who, may not be named, but make a killing, overnight. So, look, I'm not suggesting that we should make bus services overnight really expensive, but there is obviously people who are using them services. So there is ways of us making cost-effective, trips, even if they're not quite as cheap as the daytime, for example, but it's still worthwhile putting them services on overnight. I mean, we all know if we go out late at night, I do that less than I used to do, but, if we're out in the middle of the night, we do see a lot of taxis, and, I don't want to knock the taxi economy, that's really important as well, but there are people trying to get home. It's pretty obvious that if we put services on, they'll probably pay for them. So, they've got the money to go out, and I'm not saying everyone who's got the money to go out wants to pay the same price as a taxi on a bus. Of course they don't, because it doesn't take them directly home. But there's definitely some money there. And if it also goes past a company that works overnight, that service, then you can collect passengers and you're doing a double whammy. So I think there's something around having a balance of a night, providing a bus that is cost effective, but obviously also warrants the fact that it's on overnight and it's providing a service, but also trying to link in with employers as well who want to access workforce and are aware of employee safety as well. So I think there's something there about kind of funds and services that way overnight.
Yeah, absolutely. At the moment, and it's not in the north, but there's a trial going on in Stratford, and it's obviously where the Shakespeare Theatre is, and they've been working with Stagecoach, and they said, we've got all these people coming to watch all of these plays, and then we have no transport, so no one can get home. So they've been working together, and there's been absolute huge response. So there's now a bus that goes at 10:30. It goes from Stratford upon Avon through to Coventry and stops multiple places on the route. But then they've had a look, and they've been drilling down into actually who's using that bus. Guess what? None of them are theatre goers. They're people going on nights out. They're people who work in hospitality. They're people accessing their jobs through this transport. And I know these things are always a little bit chicken and egg, and this is why community engagement is so important. We don't run buses, but we know if we know there's a demand, then there's no excuse not to be.
Not a lot to add, really, but it's all been said. I think one bit, there's people in this room who do still run commercial bus operations. I guess if there had been a market and a niche for it, they would have been running it years ago. So I suspect it's a cost balance thing. I think I'm right in saying the Liverpool City region are specking in some night buses. I've seen an announcement from Steve Rotherham. So I think there's probably a clue there that maybe as we see some of the greater devolve, this is not franchising versus commercial. If there's someone can sort of specify it as part of the contract, we see it in London. And there's someone who in their younger years got the 192 bus home from Manchester at night down to Stockport. I remember some fascinating times on those buses.
Tell us more.
Afterwards.
So you have a question.
Cheers. Hi, so I'm Councillor William Shortall. I'm the lead for Liverpool City Region Combined Authority Bus Service. I was just wondering, we're heading towards the franchise model in Merseyside, but I was wondering how best practice is shared, because everyone has the travel safe and safety of women and girls, which is one of my priorities. Also, how disabled people have to, put up with the service they're getting rather than the service they want. That's the difference there. So you don't have a bus service that has a speaking service, it doesn't speak where it is. It can vary, but most of the rolling stock is old rolling stock, and the bus companies seem to want to make the best use of what old stock they've got before they'll upgrade any of the stock. And so the new bus service, such as the one outside, it'll speak. You can actually see visually where it's going, which is always helpful, because sometimes I'm going past the bus stop and say, I never knew it was called that. You just visually look and don't think. But I want to know how best practice is served, because we don't work in silos. And you often find that Manchester's already ahead in that way, in what it's done. It's already got it already. Because don't forget, transport's devolved. So it's not necessarily by Liverpool City itself, it's by the Metro Mayor. So how is that best served? And also I feel we've got, I'll throw this a little bit in here. It's really important for people. We've got a health plan, have the City of Liverpool health plan for 2040, how it's going to live. And sometimes some of the bus services want to cut down to service to the hospitals, but they never say it that way. But that's actually what it did. And I'm specifically thinking of the 418. You might know what that is, but it was going to make 500 people unable to access Arrow Park Hospital. And they don't give that a thought, and that should really be a primary legislation thing, in my opinion, that bus services, regardless of who's got it, should be able to make people get the journey to the hospital. Because that's really important, isn't it? You can't get your 5-year-old because you've got no much money, because all these cuts for the bus services are always in poor areas. They never cut them to Kensington, Chelsea or wherever. It's always in a deprived place, sink estates as they were called by saying that. Thanks. What do you think?
I think first of all, just a very glib comment, an overall comment about accessibility, is everything we've done on rail and bus through the research we've done with disabled transport users is about that consistency of offer. And when the links in the chain fall down, it impacts on disabled users a lot more for various reasons. And you know, I know Lydia's doing some work at the moment, so I'll let Lydia sort of speak more about that. The best practice one's a really good point, and I think I would say as an observer looking in at the bus industry to a certain extent over the past sort of 12, 13 years I've been around it, there hasn't been enough done, and I think there's just a bit of a chance with the enhanced partnership network. And I think while there's still a lot of people in the authorities are head down and the bus operators are head down delivering the services day to day, there's some glue across it, which maybe is through the Department for Transport, and we can think about policies and whatever, but I think that ability, the Bus Centre of Excellence has been set up as well, very early days. But I know that we want to do, we're working in, say, best part of 40 partnerships now with the research. It's going to give us some evidence in every single one of them about things that are either working well or not working well. And teasing out, well, why are they getting good scores on, say, value for money or punctuality or whatever? And we're certainly tasking ourselves, we're putting a spotlight on those areas, not just because they're doing very well, but actually where it's bloody hard, but they're working hard to try and get it to a certain place. So, yeah, I think there's more can be done. I think there's a bit of glue in the middle now that didn't probably exist a few years ago.
They're going to keep going.
In terms of accessibility, Bus Users UK do an accessibility audit with operators as well. So if there are operators where things aren't compliant, there should be. That's something that we're chasing with them and need to be referring to the Traffic Commissioner, because you know it is important and those standards are there for a reason. And yeah, but I really think, Anne-Marie, you probably want to get going on the franchising, so I'm going to hand over.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we've done a huge amount, the B Network, in relation to preparing for bus franchising around accessibility. So our specification includes 2 wheelchair bays here and loops, AVA. It's going to take time to refurbish the whole fleet, but it's a really high specification, and we're engaging with a huge amount of local partners in relation to specifying not just the on-fleet technology and the on-fleet accessibility, but also the app and things like that, making sure it works for everyone. But specifically on the point about bus franchise, and there's a gentleman in the room here who knows I speak to him on a regular basis, and he's Matt Goggins from Liverpool. So we are speaking. I'm not just speaking to Matt. I'm in conversations with West Midlands, West Yorkshire, Transport for Wales. So there's a lot of us speaking on a weekly and monthly basis. I'm a little bit of a challenge to get hold of at the moment, but I am making, because we've got a lot going on, but I am making as much availability as I can. We've had each of the local authorities in last year, and we did multiple different sessions. So look, we're the first, but you're absolutely right, we're not a silo. This is not about Greater Manchester first, Liverpool second, wherever. It just so happens we're just ahead of it. And sometimes, if I'm totally honest, that's a downside, because particularly for people like me who have to deliver it, it'd be great if Matt had done it first and could give me all his advice, but that's not where I am. But I absolutely see partnerships in the way we work, and I am constantly in conversations with other local authorities and also the Wales government. So, and we were just chatting with Kirsten before. It was the first time I met Kirsten. I said, I really want to get, and if I'm honest, partly for time and partly because she's a better placed person for doing it, but I really want to get a bus franchising network going. So whilst I'm having individual conversations and some of my team are around what we do and how things are working and how there's lots of things we can learn from, there are tons. If I sat here and said everything gone smoothly, you'd know I was a liar. So it hadn't. There are things that we can learn on and we can pass on, and I'm doing that all the time. But Kirsten agreed to take on an action to set that bus franchise and network up. So we're not just talking in our individual basis, but we're actually talking more broadly. If this is really going to go across the country, then we absolutely need to get a bit smarter about how we share it rather than it just be me having general conversations with people. So Kirsten's took that on and she's making it happen. So thank you, Kirsten, because it's one less thing for me to do. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thanks. Anne-Marie pointed it out quite nicely. TFN, our role is to support local authorities, and part of that is making the most of the best practice, working together, getting that facilitation going. So yes, franchising working group is in the plans for delivery next year, and it won't just be for the North because it's something that's common to everyone. We'll get Transport for Wales involved and the other STBs, and hopefully Scotland too, hopefully. I think that's really important, and getting the subject matter experts as well, so getting people like David and Lydia involved, but also the bus operators, and working together for the shared theme and shared objective. But also I think enhanced partnerships and franchising, they're different, but they're going to have common lessons learned. So it's joining up that bridge as well. And on your point about accessibility, so I really want it to be accessibility, not just for buses, but the infrastructure too. There's no point having this razzle-dazzle bus if you can't get on it. And my mum, she's the whole reason I'm in the buses thing, because she struggles with mobility. And so it's really important to get that across. But so I think it should apply to the infrastructure as well as the paths. And I think taking what you said about the health part, a total transport, I know it's a really complex and intimidating way of working, but there is a lot going on, and to try and see how we can overcome that and work together. And that's something that the action plan will also set out, how we can work together and making that work for everybody, so you don't have to struggle to get to your hospital appointment, etc. And I think just going one more point on the best practice, I've been in buses for 18 months and I get the bus. That was my knowledge. And thanks to people like you and all my partners and the bus operators, I feel pretty confident that I can talk about buses enough to be on a panel. And it's that speaking to each other that has really made the difference about learning. Thank
you, Kirsten. We've got time for one last question. It's the gentleman in the far corner, Donna. He's been waving at me for hours. Or it feels like hours.
Okay. This morning in the
Excuse
rail
me,
section...
what's your name, sir?
Oh, sorry, I
do
do apologise. My name's Kevin Swift. In the rail section this morning, the question was put about getting a better relationship between transport and land use stroke planning. Now, whatever the relationship between land use planning and rail, the relationship between land use planning and bus is absolutely one of the key factors in the difficulties bus operators have. We've had 50, 60 years of land use patterns and the increasing dispersal of employment and public services being geared around car users. Not explicitly, but in practice, and increasingly making patterns of bus operation less economic. Now, the bus industry as a whole, as David said a few minutes back, is heavily head down trying to get on with today's job and tomorrow's job. And there is a screaming need for the bus industry to make a much better input, and they really do not make much input. When planning decisions are being made, you get very, very little comment from the bus industry.
You're your own worst enemy.
So thank you, thank you very much, Kevin. I'm going to put a little bit of an answer into this because I'm the only councillor on the panel, and in North Yorkshire we're doing our local plan at the moment, our local transport plan and our local plan, and I'm actually saying to all my fellow councillors, what does transport look like in 2043? What do we need to make that transport look like? And if we are planning houses, how do we plan so can a bus get round there? So we are asking those questions. But one of the things that I think is important, that when bus companies see that the local plan is going on, they've got to be saying, hey, ask me as well. So they, you know, sort of it's all right for me to sort of try and push council officers to ask these questions. And we've got some great people here who are asking these questions. But maybe, you know, the industry has also got to be have their finger on the pulse as well. But I'd be delighted to know what the bus companies think that the bus service should look like in 2043. We've got modal shift, we've got all these things. So I think that's a great question. I'm going to give our panel 30 seconds each to just give you a bit of a flavour of an answer. So, Kirsten, 30 seconds.
Woohoo. So there's two things. One, strategy. If we give resources and funding to local authorities so they can focus on the strategy and long-term delivery and planning, then they can work with developers to make sure that that is in place. Bus Centre of Excellence have just done a really good piece about getting your buses lined up with your development. Highly recommend it. And the second point I'd go on to, and I'm not being on a sales pitch here, but the TAME team, which is our modelling team at TFN, are amazing, and they're developing a bus model that will look at the demand, the services that are already going on, and overlaying that with things like a development log, so you can start to plan that from there on. So again, it's going back to the data and making sure that can be used to inform your decisions.
Okay, so I'll keep it really quick. Mine's probably going to focus on local authority accountability and the, you know, whether you agree with bus franchising or not, what that brings. So when you move to a bus franchising model, the local authority have accountability for setting the service specifications and the design and the routes. The same thing is the local authority are accountable for the planning and the highways. There's no longer that ability to say, well, pointing at each other, really, because the reality is the local authority are accountable for both. So part of the things that we're doing in Greater Manchester is the development. We've got a B Network committee that looks of all things to do with transport, and the local authority is accountable for that. And so working with places and their planning around the future strategies around development is key. The second thing that I would just really say really briefly, the B Network Committee is also accountable for network reviews, and we've just started to plan our ones from Tranche 1 that went live in September, and they're not short-term things. We can do short-term changes. We have the authority to do that. This is long-term, looking at areas and seeing how we review them network, and what the local authority should be bringing to the table on that is actually their future plans around development of schools and education and workplaces and buildings and things like that. So they are fully involved in the network review. So I think the one benefit of bus franchise, and you know, whether you agree with it or not, I do, but whether you do or don't, is the fact that it does put all the accountability, the highways, the planning and the transport with the local authority. So therefore, but operators need to play their part as well. They do need to have an involvement.
Yeah, what she said. Yeah, absolutely. Linking development with, exactly, with the networks.
Joined up thinking.
Joined up thinking, yes. I've acquired a pen pal. She's 97. She's called Marjorie. And where she lives, they've just changed the route. So the bus no longer stops at the home that she lives in. It's like a retirement village. And there are 200 people that live there. And they are now isolated and stuck. Who would prove that?
Yeah, I mean, there are some examples dotted around the country where a commercial operator's done some good stuff to link into new business parks and whatever, but I do agree with you, and I just wonder whether the shift in what we're seeing around that buses are being managed across lots of areas, whether it's an enhanced partnership or whether it's a franchise model, that bargaining power that comes from the authority, but they still need to boost their capability and capacity in-house. We know that's a real challenge for delivery of some of the national bus strategy stuff at the moment. I know that some of the operating groups did bring in those kind of posts to be the kind of the what's going on in the horizon and trying to get involved with road developments or business developments, but I'm not sure whether that's been successful or not. But I think the kind of collective bargaining power that a transport authority, but they need to be, it's all coming back to money, isn't it? Having the capability and capacity in-house to be able to do that.
Thank you very much, panel. I'd like to thank the panel. In actual fact, I'm hoping we can get a transcript of everything they've said, because I think they've said some very valuable things today. I've made some rough notes, and they're very rough, and if I can read them briefly, I will do, just to summarise. Buses are flexible. Buses have the potential to be great. We need to collaborate. We need to eradicate barriers to entry for this. Buses need to coexist on highways with other road users. We need to engage and listen to the users. And maybe one of the questions we have to ask in the morning when we get up is not how do I get my car to work, but how do I get to work myself? Comments on real-time information, partnership funding. We talked about some demand-responsive buses and how that's going. We looked at nighttime economy and how important that is, but also people work at night and people need workers, and we know there's a skill shortage at the moment, so how do we make it easier for people to get to and from work? What else? We've got to make buses cool. We need to, bus drivers are heroes, both men and women, even though there's only 11% women, and we need to talk to the female drivers because they know how to make some of our more vulnerable users more safe. We need to share best practice, and we need to get the users to actually trust the bus service. And in my final point is that, and I've stolen this from David, is that we've got to get catching the bus as easy as ordering a pizza. Thank you very much.